Hey, how you doing? Thanks for downloading the show. This is GardenFork Radio. This is Eric, your host. I have this podcast and a YouTube channel talking about DIY eclectic stuff. Today, we're going to go all over the place with my friend Nicole Harkin. We're first going to talk about her family's brush with COVID, and Nicole has a whole list. So welcome, Nicole.
I do have a list. I'm ready.
That's why I like you as a co-host. You emailed me and said, the subject line of your email said, hey, we got COVID. Let's talk about it on the podcast. And I'm like, yeah, because I think people need to know what it's like to deal with that.
Yeah, it was, we spent 18 months literally in our house. And last January, we booked a trip out west. Our family's all from the west, or all live in the west. We're from the west too. But we live in DC. So we flew out there. The flight was great. Everything seemed okay. We had a minivan, saw my brother and his family, had a wonderful time. Then we all caravan to Idaho. So it's an 8-hour drive. We stopped in the middle. Stayed in Idaho with my other brother's family, had our roundup. Everything was great. Everything was really fun. And then Brent's best friend in Spokane, they had a family member who got COVID. So we had planned to drive north after seeing my brother to Spokane to see Brent's friend. And so we had to change that plan. Like, okay, we can be flexible. Let's take the kids to Yellowstone, right? We're in Idaho. We're almost there. And so we drive, from Boise, that east. We stopped at Craters of the Moon National Park, or National Monument. If any of you ever have the chance to stop in, it is the most amazing place. It looks like the moon. It's these giant lava fields in the middle of nowhere.
Oh.
So we stopped there. That was really great. And then we drove on to Yellowstone. We stayed in these amazing teepees, which I felt really guilty about, but it was a beautiful place to stay. And then we, did Yellowstone. We went to Grand Teton. We did the hiking. And then we drove back north through Montana, which we're from Montana. So we just, drove through Montana and then got to Coeur d'Alene, stayed at a hotel there with a pool, outdoor pool, and left that next morning. Nobody on any part of this trip outside of Seattle was wearing a mask. Mm-hmm. And indeed, they looked at us with, it felt like anger for wearing our mask. Yeah, it was like, what are you doing? So we just kept wearing our masks, doing what we'd been doing for a really long time. And then we had breakfast at the hotel in Coeur d'Alene. Nobody was masked there. We were in and out in 7 minutes. All four of us. Got on the road back in Seattle with my brother and his family. We do more fun things in Seattle. And then our friend in Spokane had told us about the rapid test, which we hadn't used before and had not known were available. So you can get them at Walgreens generally, $25 for 2 tests.
And what's a rapid test?
It tells you in 15 minutes if you have COVID or not.
Oh, okay.
So it's very helpful, right? The PCR test, of course, we all consider the gold standard. However, this is helpful. And there's a lot of people who think that we should all be testing every day. That's what they're doing in England. The kids don't even wear masks to school. They just stay home when they have COVID. So Wednesday, we go camping with my brother and his family in the Olympic Peninsula. We have a great time, wake up the next morning, go back to the lake, hang out at the lake. And then we drive back to Seattle to see Brent because Brent is having to work. He couldn't take a whole month off. So he's working at an Airbnb while we're out gallivanting around.
This is your husband.
Yeah, it's my husband. And Oscar takes a nap and wakes up with delirium.
Wow.
Do you have any experience with delirium?
Just in the movies.
Yeah. Well, I have another family member who gets delirium, and it was very scary for Oscar. He felt like the world was full of lines and all the lines were converging at one point. And if he walked out the door of the bedroom, the world would disappear.
Wow.
So that was really scary. So we had to convince him that wasn't happening. And of course, Brent, my husband, Googles delirium, COVID, and it's the first thing that comes up. Yes, could be a symptom of COVID. We go, we buy a rapid test, we test him, he has COVID.
Wow.
So then we're in Seattle with a kid with COVID.
And are you and your husband vaccinated?
Brent and I, yes, we got vaccinated as soon as we could.
Okay.
So we were vaccinated in March. So this is August, right? So, Brent and I are probably fine, we assume. And then the question is, will Otis get it? And, so we can't fly home. Even if Oscar had tested negative, I wouldn't have felt comfortable as a citizen flying home, right?
Right. If he's displaying symptoms, yeah.
Yes. And so also the other issue is we can't stay in our Airbnb, right? Because I could get sick, or Brent could get sick, or Otis could get sick, and that starts the 10-day period again that you have to quarantine.
Wow.
So at this point, the only option is drive.
Wow.
And Brent and I hadn't done that drive, since we were in our 30s, a long time ago.
From the West Coast to the East Coast.
Yes, right. So I had a friend this summer, she and her family were doing this epic road trip and going to all the national parks. And I remember being so jealous. So, yeah. So we all get in the car and luckily we were able to rent a car one way, right? Because that was also an issue we were worried about. So we're in a Chevy Malibu, driving across America. And I don't drive. I drive a hybrid, the Toyota Highlander hybrid, and so I was not used to being that low.
Yes.
So poor Oscar, he threw up twice, but that was really it. And then Otis, of course, got sick, and I got sick. So I had like a head cold, congestion, tinnitus. And I still have a weird crackling in my ear that sounds like Rice Krispies in one ear.
Oh, wow.
So weird. But thanks science for the vaccination, right?
Right, because if you were not vaccinated, it would be much worse, probably.
Oh, yeah, I would have been really, really sick. As it was, I was sick enough. I was really more tired. Mm-hmm. I was very tired. And I would say I still have some of the lethargy, but that's definitely going away. Otis had a fever a couple nights and that was it. And so Oscar was able to start on the first day of school, which was great for him. Otis had to stay home with me for a week. And by the end of the week, he was like, I just want to go to school, Mom.
Well, that's...
Please.
Wow, what a trip. I mean... I'm glad that you adults were vaccinated, but just shows how vulnerable the kids still are, and that people that people still aren't being careful enough that it can happen.
Yeah, I mean, no place. Of course, I had concern about staying in hotels, right?
Yeah.
But at no place where nobody was wearing masks. I mean, I don't think they were concerned about getting COVID from me. Is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
My sister is a pharmacist. She explained and that's not how this illness works anyway. So we were leaving very early at 7 a.m. and they weren't going to clean the room until noon. So there was also that time span in between. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just hang out in the air. It'll fall to the ground. And
it has to be aerosoled from what I understand. So.
Right. So, yeah, but I mean, that was the other takeaway is, I read the New York Times, I read the Washington Post, I listen to the Slate, politics podcast, the NPR politics. That's why I live in DC, right? I'm interested in this.
Yes.
I live in such a bubble. The rest of the country is completely over this.
Oh, yeah. They want their normal back.
Right.
Wow. Well, I'm glad everyone came out okay, but what a trip, literally.
Oh, yeah. Brent never got it, too. My husband never got it. He never tested positive.
And you're in a Chevy Malibu.
For 41 hours.
Well, that was a test of marriage right there.
Yeah, right. Start that.
I do I mean, when you first emailed me and said, let's talk about this on the show, and I'm like, uh-oh. And then I thought, let's spin this positive, because thanks to science, you dodged a big bullet.
Right.
We have immediate COVID tests, and we have a vaccine, and you're not jamming up an intensive care unit because you got vaccinated.
Absolutely.
Before we talked, I went on the New York Times app. And for you that think the New York Times is super liberal, I think the reporting really isn't. Their editorial, yeah, it is. But they called out Hillary Clinton time and time again. So, but even on the East Coast, the intensive care units are overwhelmed because of people that don't get vaccinated get the Delta variant, which is much more severe than the original variant. And they're some of the hospitals, even around here, on the tri-state area, are at 98%. The intensive care unit capacity is at 98%. I'm like, wow.
Well, and we hadn't paid attention to the statistics before we left, because we left just before Delta. Like, I don't know. I mean, I knew about Delta, but I didn't know about Delta.
Yeah.
And so, once we were there and we looked at the New York Times map, we're like, oh, Wyoming's a dark red.
Yes, so is Alaska, actually.
Oh, yeah. So
anyway, I'm really glad you came through that. I'm sorry you had to drive 40 hours in a Chevy Malibu.
I know, right? But yeah, right. Spin this positive. Thanks, science.
So do your kids now have the antibody then?
Yeah, they have the antibodies. They're like superpower. The hard thing is, right now in America, is that, we've decided to send all the kids back to school. I totally support that. But anytime a kid tests positive in a class, they're quarantining the whole class.
Yeah, that happened to my neighbor's kid.
But it's not just going to happen once. You're going to be on a treadmill, right?
Yes.
And enough kids haven't gotten it that they don't exactly know what to do with the kids who have gotten it. Like, to go back to school, you were supposed to come back with a negative test. Well, according to the CDC, the boys can't do it. None of us can do a test for 3 months because they are likely to come back positive.
Wow.
So, we had some rigmarole with that of like figuring out what to do. But, more and more kids are going to be in that boat. So
I did read that the Pfizer vaccine is close to approval for children of certain ages, I think from
5 to 11.
5 to 11. So, I mean, considering, was it the polio vaccine took 4 years to make?
I know. And that will get us out of this treadmill. But like your neighbors, your friends with kids are going to keep having this happen, right?
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, I think thank you for sharing that. I was very curious about what was going on, and yeah. So just avoid the Buick rental car.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, I'm gonna let you behind the curtain here. I'm building a new pizza oven that uses a brick arch in a 55-gallon drum, and I took pictures of that. And I posted it using the Patreon app to my patrons. So they get an email saying, hey, Eric posted these pictures, and they can read it right in the email, or they can get a notification if they have the Patreon app on their phone or iPad or other device. And that is kind of one of the behind the scenes things that I share with the patrons, because I'm always asking you, hey, become a patron, and you get the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm thinking, well, they don't really know what the behind the scenes stuff is. Is it me tying my shoelaces? No. It's pictures of the dogs and what I'm building on and what is failing. I'm less and less enamored of public social media. I'm more and more loving the idea of the GardenFork crew and people that are kind of like-minded about doing stuff and sharing stuff, but maybe not sharing it with the whole world because, well, the world's a little crazy out there. So anyway, not the usual Patreon blurb. What do you call this? Pitch, I guess. But more information about signing up is in the show notes, or go to patreon.com/GardenFork. Patreon.com/GardenFork. All right. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about the canoe. I'm so excited. It looks so good in the pictures.
Well, I actually am writing a Patreon post about this called 1 hour and 20 minutes. And
okay.
I took apart my favorite canoe, which is the first canoe I got. I traded my neighbor a pickup truck camper top for this fiberglass canoe that was already old. And I put it in the water and it paddled like butter. It just glided, or like Teflon. It just glides over the water. And it started to fall apart, and it has this faux birch bark pattern on a white fiberglass canoe. And I turned it upside down and stuck it behind my garage. And I got a couple of name brand canoes made of these newer materials. And I have two of them. I bought them secondhand, at yard sales or Craigslist, and they paddle like a barge. They're made for a family with 4-year-olds, I think. So, okay, don't, the canoe don't fall over,
Right.
And it turned me off to canoeing. I was like, these are horrible. And then I looked at the ones that paddle nice, and they're quite expensive. So last year I was like, I'm going to rebuild the white canoe. I'm going to make a video about that. And I turned it upside down on some sawhorses, and it just sat there. So just lately, I've kind of come out of this funk of not really wanting to make videos. And yesterday, I had some time to kill. I had to do something at a certain time yesterday. I can't remember what. But I was like, I got the paint. I'm going to paint the canoe. And Rust-Oleum oil-based paint is very good for fiberglass, by the way, if you need to paint it.
Okay.
And I sanded it. You have to want to create a tooth. I sanded the canoe. I had previously done a couple little fiberglass repairs. I took a microfiber cloth to get off the sanding debris. I painted it, and in 20 minutes I was done. And I'm like, I got to tell Nicole about this. And now I'm all excited about finishing it. It is so weird. Your brain is a weird thing.
Well, I think about that a lot with, because I'm a writer. So you'll work on something and you'll have read it aloud. You will have had other people read it. But as soon as you hit the send button, you notice all the mistakes. And why didn't my brain see it before the send button?
Yes. I do that with videos. I edit a video, I upload it to YouTube, and then I let it sit there. You can set it for private. In other words, it's pre-published. And then I watch it again on YouTube, and watching it on YouTube is a different experience than watching it in the edit system. And I often find mistakes that I tweak.
Right. So you painted the thing. Now you've got you're excited about it again. So what do you have to do next?
I'm going to paint the inside. I'm painting it hunter green. And then I bought some, you have to have it's called a gunnel or gunwale. Erin from the Impatient Gardener is yelling at us because she's a sailor. It's that rim along the top edge of the canoe where you can rest your paddle, but it gives strength to the canoe. And that is, depending on the canoe, it's made out of ash or some sort of high-end waterproof wood. I went and got plastic wood, which is a fairly new thing. It's PVC pipe. It's just like PVC pipe, but it's wood. It's like a 1x2, and it flexes. And I'm going to glue 2 pieces of that together in what's called a scarf joint, which is a joint you cut at an angle. I'm going to glue it and screw it because it's a 16-foot long. You need a 16-foot long piece of wood.
Okay.
And then I'm going to put those on both sides of the top end of the fiberglass. I'm going to put in 2 seats, very simple seats, and then a crossbar in the middle, and I'm done.
Oh my gosh. You could still canoe this year.
Yes, we'll be in the water in a couple of weeks. It's so weird how just yesterday I was like, oh, I'm just going to paint that. And I could have painted it any other day. I'm standing in the driveway, and yet it took me a year to do it.
Maybe it's because your brain knew you were going to talk to me today.
Well, there's that accountability thing, got to talk to Nicole.
She's going to ask about this stupid canoe.
Hey, if you guys have had something you were stuck on, we'd like to hear about it. It's radio@gardenfork.tv. All right. So what's next on our list?
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I was looking up. I had yelled back at the podcast a few times in the recent time. Like my one question for Erin was like, what happened to fish in the lakes? The lakes freeze. Why can't she just leave her fish in the pond?
Oh, in the stock tank pond. Yeah, in her garden.
Anyway, there's a reason. They must freeze all the way through or something. I don't know. But I was looking at what your podcast is categorized as. It's categorized as leisure category with other popular websites or podcasts like Dungeons and Daddies, Car Talk, Critical Role, Duck Call Room, and Past Gas. But I'll also tell you that if you scroll down a little further, you can see people also subscribe to gardening podcasts. If they subscribe to yours.
Yeah, the suggestion algorithm and the search method in the Apple Podcast app or on iTunes on your desktop machine is pretty horrible. So it's really word of mouth and accidental discovery. And the other thing I realize is I don't really mention a whole lot on the YouTube channel that I have a podcast.
And you should.
And I need to start doing that. And
yeah. Well, it's interesting your point about the search engines. I mean, I guess Apple's just not putting any money into doing that. But I am a very dedicated library user, and even more so this year because, the boys were home. I felt completely out of control with respect to their learning. And I was like, well, the one thing I can do is always have books for them that they want to read.
Oh, great.
So I basically go to the DC library every day. And the ladies there know me. Oh, hi, Miss Harkin. So, but because I'm such a power user, there's an app for the library, and they updated that during the COVID. And then you can go to the main website and search. And the app's search algorithm is just horrible. Like, it drives me insane. I can't. And I keep wanting to can I talk to the person? Could I have a sit down with the person in charge of the algorithm, please?
I bet they're outsourcing it to a company that builds an app targeted toward public libraries.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And so they have a boilerplate app, and then the company will customize, or a tech person at the library can customize the skin, the face, the buttons and stuff.
Well, they did explain to me that they get all of the books. They use a standardized, some kind of catalog that they just download whatever book it is. The Expats by Chris Pavone has all of this metadata associated with it, and they buy that listing. But sometimes those are wrong too.
Yeah.
And I know because my boys will only read graphic novels at this point.
Oh, I love graphic novels. I
love them.
I know a couple people that have done them, and it's like,
fun, really?
It's like comic book, but better.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm always trying to find them, but if they're miscategorized, I'm never going to find them when I do my search.
I always think of comic books as like Batman and Robin or superheroes, and a graphic novel can tell all sorts of stories. And maybe I'm not looking at the right comic books, but
no, I think too, in the production quality is a little bit higher on the graphic novels, right? They're printed as a real book. But yeah, so anyway, there's my rant about the public library. Sorry. I love our public library.
We give money to the Brooklyn Public Library. So it's like, I just love going to the library. It's just I get lost in the stacks, and it's just these you find this book and you're like, wow.
I didn't even know I was interested in this. This is fascinating.
Yeah, one more rabbit hole for Eric to go down.
Speaking of which, I'm listening to a book right now about termites.
Oh, wow. We're saying wow a lot today.
I know. Well, they're fascinating. The termites are really great. I use this app, Scribd. Have you heard of this?
I have.
Okay, so you pay like $14 a month, and theoretically, you have unlimited access to their database. Now, that's not true. They throttle you after 3 audiobooks a month, but that's a different issue. So the book I'm listening to right now is called UnderBug, An Obsessive Tale of Termites and Technology.
Wow.
And she's talking about like whether each individual termite is an individual or are they a collective? And it's just fascinating. Highly recommended.
Termites are very similar actually to honeybees in their structure, because like a honeybee will very quickly die without other honeybees around in a hive.
Well, and they make the point that honeybees and termites are not related,
Right.
and have evolved in parallel.
Yeah. I've had several brushes with termites because I live in buildings that are old and New England is wet. So
Right?
termites love wet wood. So if you have a leak in your house and you're somewhere the wood gets close to the soil, you can get termites. So.
Oh God, that's one of my biggest nightmares.
And then we got in the previous brownstone I lived in, we had termites, and so I had the company come in and they inject the soil in the front and back perimeter, and because you have common walls on the sides, you can't, that's just brick.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told both my neighbors, and it's courtesy, hey, we have termites, we're going to treat for it. Here's the exterminator we're working with. You want to talk to? And my one neighbor said, "Oh, I don't have them." I'm like, "Well, you will, because I'm going to spray for them, and then they're going to leave."
Right. Did they end up signing up or not?
I don't know. I told them and I walked away I was like, look, I emailed them. I said, I've given you notice. I'm giving you a heads up. It's time to put on the adult pants,
And deal with the termites that are coming for you. All right. So the only other thing that I have on my list to talk about is biking. And you know how much I love the biking.
You're right. Because you have a group about Washington, D.C. Bikers.
D.C. family biking.
Yeah.
We unfortunately in D.C. lost a child this week who was biking. And I guess this is more of a PSA. D.C. has recently changed the speed limit for the city to 20 miles an hour. They haven't changed all the signs yet. But just to slow down, just slow down. You just never know when a kid's going to dart out.
New York City's speed limit is 25 miles an hour, and they're installing more speed cameras in different places.
Yeah, I just think we need more. I mean, there's the rugged individualist part of me who grew up in Montana who's like, speed cameras if somebody's not there. And then there's the parent in me who's like, just stop speeding.
Right.
Please, just stop speeding. So there is a study that I read years ago, too, with respect to bikers, is that like for every mile per hour over 15 miles an hour you're biking increases your likelihood of a traumatic brain injury exponentially in the case of an accident.
I didn't think of that, but I have an e-bike now.
Mm-hmm.
And I included a little clip of it in the latest bee video. And I don't like riding above 12 or 15 miles an hour. It's just too fast. I'm like, this is too fast. And I have to stop at red lights anyway, so I usually can't get going too fast. But.
Right. We have a couple really nice trails in DC. They worked really hard on that to get more trails. But yeah, I mean, I just, I think about that all the time. Like any amount over 15 miles an hour exponentially increases your likelihood of a traumatic brain injury. So just don't do it.
I also got a helmet recommended by co-host Rick. It's called a MIPS. It has a new technology for impact absorption. I think it's called MIPS is the technology.
Well, there is, I should look this up, at the University of North Carolina or University of Virginia, they do have like a bicycle helmet testing center. And they test and rate all bicycle helmets.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, it's really good. It's almost like, like Consumer Report style. Um, but yeah, once you've had any impact with your helmet, you've got to get a new one.
Yeah, Rick took a fall, and it saved his brain. So you can all listen to him more on my podcast when he goes down those rabbit holes.
I listened to that one. That was a good one. I don't remember what bike he has though.
He has, it was a Kickstarter. It is a Kickstarter project bike. And
Okay.
I don't remember the name of it, but it's, he likes it. It gets you where you're going. I love the idea I can go up hills now and my knees aren't exploding.
I mean, it's just the sweating factor. Like I sweat so much less. Although I did, so my boys combined weigh about 140 pounds. And so ideally my bike is made to bike kids around.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I have it. I have a Yuba El Mundo. It's like 8 years old though. And so going up the hill the other day, we went to soccer and they were like, "Go mama, go." And I was like, "Just be quiet. I've just got to get up the hill."
Have you had to replace
Even
the battery?
I have I bought an additional battery.
Oh, okay.
The old one, the range had gone down. I mean, I could only go like 10 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me nervous. The new one I can go probably it's a Bosch. No, it's not. It's the company went out of business.
The battery.
Auto company. Yeah, the battery and the motor company. So now I can go, when they went out of business, I bought a new battery. So I can probably go 25 miles now, which is great. That's nothing.
No, that's
great.
Yeah, but, I mean, I just stay in the general area. I don't really go on long rides with it. So
does yours have responsive pedaling, responsive assist?
Right. It's called a pedal assist mode. That's the only mode I use. You can ride the thing like a moped if you want.
Okay, so mine is supposed to have the pedal assist, but the pedal assist isn't working anymore. So now I only have my turbo button. That's what I call it, the turbo button.
Wow. Mine has a throttle where you can add in some extra electric power, or you can just hit the throttle all the way and it goes. But I give it a little bit of throttle and I can go up hills. I just go down the first or second gear and I pedal up. And I love it. It's called, there'll be a link in the show notes here for the bike that I have. So,
yeah, those those are great bikes. I think there was concern in the biking community because they were making them in China when they first came out, but They seem like over time they're holding up. So,
at the price point they sell them at, it's amazing because some of the other bikes are selling like for $6,000.
Oh yeah, I mean my dream bike is, well, I have like levels of dream bike, but like, the European family bikes are, $8,000. You can go up to $8,000. Now, what's great is in Europe you get tax assistance. You get a rebate for buying an e-bike.
That's smart.
And that is actually in the infrastructure plan that they're trying to pass. Up to $1,500, which would be great.
Yeah, one less car on the road. Makes a big difference.
But everybody's got to slow down.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well, I've gotten through my list. Do you have anything else?
No, that's great. It's people have gotten to commuted from their bedroom to their spare office room with their cup of coffee by now. So I would love to hear your experiences. It's radio@gardenfork.tv. Nicole, is there any particular place you want people to go to find you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can always check out my photos at NicoleHarkin.com.
I have checked out your photos, actually.
Oh, and?
They're great. If you lived closer, I would hire you to come over and make me look handsome.
Nice. A little headshot. Get that started.
Get rid of that giant lump on my forehead.
I don't do Photoshop, I should say.
That's fine. I am who I am.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, exactly.
I've noticed, I'll go down a rabbit hole for a second here, but as I age, I notice more and more of my friends wear hats all the time because they're going bald. And I'm losing my hair and I'm fine with it. And I like to wear a hat because it makes it easier to be outside with the sun. But then I'm like, I take off my hat because I'm like, I'm not hiding the fact. I want to make sure people realize I'm losing my hair. Does that sound weird?
Well, it's just a normal thing that happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah, some people's genes are better than others with the baldness thing. So I'm like, okay, I'm losing my hair, you know? All right, cool. Thanks so much for producing the show, Nicole.
Hey, I'm here for you.
All right, Nicole's going to stick around for the after show for our patrons, but love to hear from you guys. Make it a great day, and thank you. GardenFork Radio is produced by GardenFork Media, LLC in Brooklyn, New York. Our producer is Sean O'Neill. If you need an amazing podcast producer, visit Sean's site, SeanInBrooklyn.com. That's Sean, SEAN, in Brooklyn.com. Our executive producer is Jimmy Goose. For more information about Jimmy and the custom hollow books he makes, visit hollowbooks.com. The music in the show is licensed from audioblocks.com and uniquetracks.com.